As Gail mentioned, my name is Michelle Mapp, and I'm so pleased to be serving as the interim CEO for RIE. It is truly a privilege. I also have the incredible privilege of introducing our keynote for this morning, Dr. Judith Weaver. Judith has a PhD in Reichian psychology, and she was mentored by Reich's eldest daughter, Ava. She is certified in somatic experiencing, biodynamic craniosacral therapy, and prenatal and birth therapy. She is a Gestalt therapist and a Rosen method practitioner and senior teacher. Certified to teach Tai Chi, she created the Tai Chi program at Naropa Institute. She is professor at the California Institute of Integral Studies for more than 25 years. She co-founded Santa Barbara Graduate Institute and created the Somatic Psychology Doctoral Program. She maintains a private practice in the United States and teaches internationally. We are very pleased to kick off our two-day event with Judith Weaver. With that, Judith, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, RIE. I am so glad and honored to be here with you today. I'm honored to be presenting at this RIE conference and acknowledging the life and contribution of Magda Gerber. I think you all know the story of how Magda came to the US and in 1978 co-founded with Thomas Forrest, a pediatrician and clinical professor, they co-founded Resources for Infant Educarers, which is how we are all here today. RIE was one of the first places in the United States to offer a specialized environment for infant observation and parent education. You probably know how Magda Gerber met Emmy Pickler, but let me tell you a little bit about it. In 1937, they were both living in Budapest, and Magda's 6-year-old daughter had a sore throat, and their regular family pediatrician was away. Magda called the mother of her daughter's school friend, who was a doctor. And Dr. Emmy Pickler examined Magda's daughter, and she was so impressed by how respectfully Dr. Pickler spoke to her daughter and the cooperation that she elicited, even with her daughter feeling poorly. She was so impressed that she asked Dr. Pickler to become the family's regular pediatrician. Magda was also so impressed, she eventually went to school and earned a degree in early childhood education. So the Gerber family came to the United States in 1957. And in 1978, as I said before, Magda Gerber and Thomas Forrest set up RIE, which is based on the Pickler approach. Now, I'd like to tell you an extension of the story of how it happened. And I would like to back up and introduce a few other people and show you how it all comes to circle around in a web where RIE is a very important part and connects with other seminal work in the world and eventually brings me to be here presenting to you today. So Michelle, if we could put up the chart now. Great. Now, how can I get back to, I have just lost my entire, let's see. I'm a little lost here. I can see the chart, but I can't see anything else. How do I get to anything else?
Okay. You probably want to minimize it so that it's not taking over the whole screen.
And how do I do that? Okay. No, actually, I can't even see my notes. That's what I'm interested in.
If you press the escape button, you'll be able to see your notes.
Thank you very much. Okay. So, and I can also see the chart, which is wonderful. I hope everybody can see the chart. And in the lower right-hand corner, you will see RIE. And above it, you will see Magda Gerber, which is where RIE comes from. And above that, and a little to the center, you see Emmy Pickler. And then you see a whole bunch of other people that probably haven't been acquainted with many of them, and this is what I would like to introduce you to. So starting with Pickler, which I'm sure many of you have heard about, let me give you a little bit of background for Emmy Pickler. Pickler's first child, Anna, was born in 1931, and Pickler and her husband, who was a mathematician and an educator, of course, like all parents, wanted to promote the healthiest development of their child. They agreed to allow her freedom of movement and patiently await her developments on her own schedule. From that experience with her daughter, Emmy Pickler clarified what she really knew, which was that a child must not be externally stimulated to do movement and games, and that every detail in dealing with the child and their environment is important. Now I want to take you further back into the story. Emmy Pickler had a sister-in-law who was living in Berlin. She had undergone surgery, and to recover her health, excuse me, she worked with a woman named Elsa Gindler. So now we're going up to the top of the chart, and we will come down from there. Gindler had been a student and a teacher of harmonic gymnastics, which translated from German is beautiful movement. As a young woman, Elsa Gindler had been diagnosed with a severe disease. We're not sure, but most people say she had tuberculosis, that one of her lungs had collapsed, and her doctor told her to go to a sanitarium in Switzerland, like many people were doing for their health. Elsa Gindler was poor and had no money for that. So she decided she would work by herself and explore possibilities for her own regeneration and health. She was a vegetarian, and she began to give herself complete attention to what was happening within herself at every moment, in every activity during the entire day. Today, we might call that mindfulness meditation, but no one knew about that in the West in the early 1900s. Gindler felt if she could allow her diseased lung to rest, it could heal. She maintained this way of living, and she healed herself. I was told that she had said that sometimes in the depth of night, when it was very quiet, she felt she could even feel the earth moving. A year later, she was in the market and bumped into her doctor, and he was shocked to see that she was still alive. He took her into his office to check her out, and yes, she was healed. In her professional work, Gindler was teaching these beautiful movements that she had been trained and certified in. But she eventually felt that teaching a fixed set of common movements for everyone gave a narrowness of approach and experience. She wanted freedom for people to explore independently and to develop individually. Her work changed, and she came to offer opportunities for each person to become more aware of what was happening in their own organism. Eventually, she stopped teaching techniques in her classes, and she changed from using the word exercise to experiment. Very different, isn't that? For the material in her classes, she used the natural activities of everyday life. And Gindler's focus became what we would say in English as sensing our way or exploring. She was exploring. She was experimenting to find out how to be a, quote, a responsive instrument for living, unquote. Breath was a big focus for Gindler. Breathing was a teaching for her in her own healing and in her classes. Gindler did not want to teach others what they ought to be, but only to lead her students to find out how they actually were. She never gave a name to the simple, deep work that developed. Some say that the closest Gindler got to a name was Arbeit am Menschen, which translated from the German means working with the whole being. although others say that it was just a phrase that was used about her work, and she truly never gave it a name. Gindler lived her entire life in Berlin. She never advertised her classes. Yet over the years, her work has spread and has had far-ranging influence in many fields in myriad countries. In 1925, Gindler met the experimental musician and educator Heinrich Jacobi. They had similar feelings about working with people, and after studying with each other, Gindler and Jacobi collaborated in the development of their simple, profound work. Even though they didn't especially work with children, they stated that they felt it was essential to understand the natural path of child development in order to allow the child's initial skills and powers to develop. They stated that they felt that traditional infant and early childhood education actually damaged the initiative of children and stunted their development. Interestingly, one of Gindler's students was the second wife of Wilhelm Reich. She was a dancer and was the one who influenced Reich to acknowledge and include the aspects of breath, energy, muscles, and movement into his psychoanalysis. This was the beginning of all the various kinds of body psychotherapy and somatic psychotherapies that are so popular and sought after in the world today. In the 1940s in the US, Wilhelm Reich had a center in New York for the observation and support of working with mothers and babies. As far as I know, this was the first program in the US paying attention to infants and trying to heal and support the adults for the natural benefit and development of the child. Upon his death, Reich created and left everything to the Wilhelm Reich Infant Trust Fund, which is still active today. This trust was so named because of Reich's belief that the best way to eliminate psychological and somatic disturbances was prevention, and that this prevention was possible only by safeguarding the unarmored life of infants. It is clear that Wilhelm Reich is the father of all these somatic psychotherapies and practices in the world today. I have written articles and everyone I know agrees with me that Elsa Gindler was the mother of the world of somatic therapies. So back to Emmy Pickler. In observing the changes in the movements and the behavior of her sister-in-law, Pickler felt that she wanted to learn from this person in Berlin, and she invited Gindler to come and teach in Budapest. Gindler was busy and had no time to go, and she asked her student, Elfriede Hengstenberg, who had worked with her for almost 20 years by that time, to go in her place. Elfriede Hengstenberg had also received her certificate to teach gymnastic. That was in 1915, and she worked as a gymnastic teacher at a Montessori school in Berlin. She worked primarily with school-aged children who were having difficulties. In her work, she wanted to create an environment that was as close to nature as possible so that the children could develop holistically. Her highest maxim when working with children was respect for the child's own initiative. She had started studying with Gindler in 1918, and that led her to the insight that it was necessary to also work with adults in order to influence the children's environment. Hengstenberg also worked with pregnant women at a time when that was not necessarily done, and also adults who were weakened from operations, injuries, and other problems. The dedication in Hengstenberg's book is, quote, "for the children of the world and their caretakers," unquote. Her heart was always with the children, but with the adults also. She says, quote, "I found that adults, even with their more deeply seated hindrances, could change through the same kind of work, and that particularly In the cases of parents and teachers, such change in them was a necessity for the healthy unfolding of the children in their care. Unquote. So Hengstenberg went to Budapest 3 times for 4 weeks each time during summer holidays, 1935, 36, and 37. And 1935 was the same time that Dr. Pickler was setting up her practice as a family pediatrician. Pickler and Hengstenberg came to be good friends, as you can imagine, and they both shared the vision that children can independently discover and develop their motor skills. Gindler, Hengstenberg, and Pickler all recognized the relationship between the emotional and the physical influence on the structure of the body. They also recognized that inner laws of movement govern the body, unfolding when given the opportunity in the right environment. Both Gindler's and Hengstenberg's work was correctional, redressing misalignments that had occurred in the body and in the psyche. Dr. Pickler's approach was preventative, supporting natural development with an emphasis on emotional security, which would lead to physical unfolding without distortion. And of course, Magda Gerber's work follows in that direction. Emmy Pickler worked as a family doctor for 10 years. They were difficult years for her, not only because the family was Jewish, but also because her husband was in prison for political reasons from 1936 to 1945. Emmy and her daughter survived the persecution during World War II with the help of the parents of the children she cared for. And after the war, Pickler did not again open her private practice, but she worked for the National Association for Abandoned and Malnourished Children. There were so many orphans, traumatized children, homeless children. After the war was a tragic situation for many adults and children. And in 1946, Pickler was asked to take over the supervision of the Losy orphanage, which she headed until 1979. The name comes from the street where it is located in Budapest. When she told the authorities that she would only do it if she could do it in her own way, they said, basically, look, do anything you want. Please take care of the children. Just get them off the streets. So what she did was fire the medical staff that had been hired. And she brought in young women from the countryside and told them, be with the babies. Don't do anything for them that they can do for themselves. Just be with them. Emmy Pickler sought to establish a comforting atmosphere at the orphanage. She wanted to allow the children to grow up without interference and the usual institutional damage. And they had more damage with them even before they came to the institution. There have been studies on the children who lived at Losy, including a landmark study funded by the World Health Organization in the 1960s and 70s. It looked at the social adjustment of the children reared at the Pickler Institute. Losy was different from other orphanages or institutions, and the children there were found to show no trauma effects such as headbanging, rocking, or inabilities to engage with others. During the 65 years, more than 2,000 infants lived at Losy. Most were between the ages of 0 to 3 years old, although some would stay longer, even up until the age of 7. In Budapest, it is said that Pickler babies can be recognized even when they are older because they move with grace and freedom. Dr. Pickler believed this was because they were not propped up before they were ready to move into a sitting position on their own. They were not walked around by having their hands held, but they were allowed to develop their walking at their own pace. They were not strapped into swings and infant seats, but were allowed to move naturally and at will and freely, and allowed to spontaneously follow their own inborn developmental timetable. Charlotte Selver, my teacher, told me that an unusual amount of Olympic athletes came from Lozi. Because of their natural connection with their own physical body and their abilities, they could be freer with their movements and skills and trust themselves more. Lozi's role as a residential nursery ended in 2011 when the government closed the infant's home and dissolved the institute. Now it exists as a training center for professionals and the Emmy Pickler Daycare Center and other various playgroups for children. Pickler's goal at Lozi had been to create an institution where the occupants would not become institutionalized, and she achieved it. Magda Gerber, as you all well know, played a big role in bringing Pickler's ideas to the English-speaking world through RIE. Pickler's methods of raising infants and young children have been known, popularized, and taught throughout the United States and many other places in the world by RIE. I mentioned my teacher, Charlotte Selver. Her story is similar to Gindler and Hengstenberg insofar as she was also trained in a system of beautiful movement and eventually discovered there were other ways to do things. She discovered Elsa Gindler and Heinrich Jacobi and worked with them for 11 years before she left Germany for the United States in 1938. She settled in New York City to begin her career in offering this Gindler work that she eventually named sensory awareness. I'm told that today sensory awareness is a part of the Pickler training so that each student can arrive at a connection within his or her own body. Truly, the only way we can have an understanding and relationship with someone else's body, even a baby, or I should say, especially a baby, is to have that connection with ourselves. I worked with Charlotte Selver from 1968 until 2003, when she passed on at the age of 102 after giving a class that evening. Several other students of Gindler came to the United States and taught also, but Charlotte had the unusual opportunity to attract an amazing, varied student body. Erich Fromm, the famous psychoanalyst, was a faithful student of hers and had all the people in his well-known therapeutic clinic take classes with her. Fritz Perls, developer of Gestalt therapy, studied privately with Charlotte every day for 1.5 years. And Fritz's wife, Laura Perls, who developed Gestalt therapy with him, had studied with Gindler in Germany in the 1930s. Alan Watts, you may know him as a popularizer of Zen, he received a phone call one day and the person said, "I met someone who does what you talk about." And Alan Watts started studying with Charlotte Selver. Shunryu Suzuki, the founder of Zen Center in San Francisco, felt such a connection with sensory awareness that it was the only other kind of work that he allowed to be presented in Zen Center and its other retreat centers. Peter Levine, the development of somatic experiencing, integrated sensory awareness into his work, which makes it the most effective therapeutic way of working to heal the effects of trauma that I know of. Esalen Institute, you may know of it. It was the first human potential center or growth center in the United States. It's in Big Sur, California. It started as a think tank and had talks and lectures. In 1963, Charlotte Selver gave the first experiential workshop at Esalen. She continued for years offering many different workshops and study groups over many years there at Esalen and other places. And many, many different therapists and teachers from various schools and skills have been influenced by sensory awareness. Many practitioners today don't know where that delicate, deep aspect of the work they studied comes from. But if we look at it, we can usually trace it back to the work of Charlotte Selver, or I could say Elsa Gindler. Eventually, the Sensory Awareness Foundation was created, and it has published wonderful bulletins about many of these inspiring pioneers. Gindler, Pickler, Hengstenberg, Jacobi, and various bulletins about Charlotte's work. I know that RIE has the Pickler bulletin in its bookstore. One more person I want to add to this map of development of this work, and it is Ute Strub. And maybe some of you know her or have worked with her. Ute is a physiotherapist who lives in Germany, and she was a student of Elfriede Hengstenberg. And she is still now a visiting colleague at LOSI. She has helped to translate Pickler's books and currently works alongside Dr. Anna Tardos, who is Emmy Pickler's daughter, the daughter who was Magda Gerber's schoolmate. And so Ute works with Anna with training and facilitating learning there. Ute also offers seminars internationally, and many of us have been fortunate enough to experience her teaching either by in-person workshops or recently virtually. It's interesting to me to note that Gindler and Jacobi worked with adults with awareness and attention to children. Elfriede Hengstenberg worked mainly with young children and adolescents, also with pregnant mothers and other adults with difficult situations. Emmy Pickler worked with infants. Magda Gerber worked with infants. Charlotte Selver worked with adults. Ute Strub works with children and adults. And if I may add myself into this amazing circle of very, very deep and special women, I also work with infants and children and adults. I work on prenatal issues as well as postnatal and beyond. And when people ask me who my clients are, I usually say, oh, I work with big babies and little babies. I'm sure you notice that we still have our baby parts and feelings in us. It is so interesting that Ruth Ann and Jill, without knowing anything about our mutual connections and our deep history connection, that they would be attracted to the little bit of work I was able to do in my talk at the United States Association of Body Psychotherapy, and that they invited me to be here now. There must be some magical attraction in this work. We had no idea. I think I would call us cousins in this field. So I've been talking a lot. I hope you can enjoy the amazing stories of how far this work has traveled and how many it influences in such varied ways. And that RIE is an honored and important participant in the world of helping infants, children, people live better lives. Now, I would like to share with you some sensory awareness explorations and lead you to experience some of the work that focuses on how it may help us support ourselves and then also be able to pass the experiences on to others. So Michelle, maybe we take down the chart now, if we can. And just go back to, well, I can't see much. Is the chart down and can people?
Yes, we have taken down the chart.
Okay, so what is on the screen now?
Just you.
Oh dear, okay. Okay, fine. All right. So I want to share with you the experience of sensory awareness, or in Europe, it's sometimes called Gindler work, which is maybe where this whole blossoming of so many things happened. And I have to admit that sensory awareness is very difficult to explain because it's so simple. It's basically living in the moment, or being conscious of living in the moment, and feeling yourself. In this work, there's no wrong. Everything is just as it is in the moment. It probably won't be the same thing in the next moment. But to feel, to be aware of what's happening. That's the sensory awareness. I want to share with you, I want to take you through a few explorations, and I will ask you some questions. You may not have an answer, and that's perfectly fine. That's your answer of the moment. You may not even hear my questions. That's okay too. You will hear what's important to you to hear. I just want to assure you that what you experience is your truth. And the intention is to help one know oneself better. So just feel, just notice, that's a big just experience and respond as you feel. Everyone is different. No one has the same experience. If we can come to respect our own experience, then we can also come to acknowledge and respect that of others. And after I lead you through some of the experiences, I will ask for responses. If anybody wants to share anything about their experience, we're able to do that. But right now, I just wonder what you've been aware of as you've been listening to me. It's been a while. I'm guessing you're sitting. You could be lying on the floor too or something. But have you been comfortable? Or were you uncomfortable in any ways? And if so, did you do anything about it? Perhaps you weren't aware of much in yourself as you were listening to me. I know often I'm just so intent upon the other person, I sort of forget myself. But now that I ask you, what are you aware of now? Just notice. Are you aware of your breathing? And now that I mention it, you are probably aware of your breathing. But I wonder if you were aware of your breathing before I mentioned it. How does it feel to you now? Where in you do you feel the movement of your breath? And if you don't feel the movement of your breath, that's your experience. Just take the time to notice yourself. I'm encouraging you to be more aware of yourself, pay more attention to yourself than being aware of me. So are there places in you where you can feel the movement of your breath? And maybe the movement of your breath feels different in different places. Just notice. And we've been using our eyes a lot on these screens, looking at the chart. Now, feeling your breath, how is it if you allow your eyes to close? Closing your eyes, does your breath change? Are there different areas where you feel the movement of your breath with your eyes closed? Maybe there are different areas where you don't feel any movement with your eyes closed. And now, whatever that feels most comfortable to you, eyes closed or eyes open, can you take your hand and just touch a place in you where you do feel the movement of your breath, whether it's your chest or your shoulder or your nose, whatever it is with you, just a light touch. Just a simple touch in a place where you feel your breath. And how does that feel to you? Does that touch change your breathing? And now, if you just very simply take your touch away, take your hand away, noticing again you, yourself, how your breathing is now. How does your hand feel now? The hand that touched your breath. And now, if you can feel a place in you where you don't feel the movement of your breath, take your hand and touch there. And again, just feel. How does this place where you don't sense the movement of your breath, how does that feel to you now? How does the touch feel to you now? And now again, just simply taking your hand away, what are you aware of? How does that place where you touched feel? Is there any breathing there now, or is it still as it was before? Is it as it was before, or are there little changes, whatever there are? And how does your hand feel, the one that touched? And now, eyes open or closed, just noticing your whole being, whether you're standing or sitting or lying, how you feel your breathing now, how you feel your whole being now. So thank you for coming along with me on an exploration, a sensory awareness experiment. Now, I feel I must express to you some of my concerns with the world presently. And maybe as I talk a little bit more, we notice what happens to our breathing. What I want to express is the world of the infant and how it is being affected by our development of connections and communications. And it started long before the COVID-19 pandemic came. The stage of my concerns probably started about the time television became popular, but I didn't realize it then. I can give you an example of what I'm concerned about. One of the many scenes that has troubled me recently was when I was in a very popular area back in those times and watching a mother and her infant who was in a carriage. The mother was on her phone and the infant was wanting a connection with her mother. She made sounds and she moved her arms. She fussed with her legs. Finally, she arched her back and then she cried. And her mother was involved with her phone. Eventually, the infant went still and spaced out. And it didn't take long. Perhaps some of you have seen in your RIE classes videos of Dr. Edward Tronick, the developmental psychologist, and the films that were made in the mid-1970s of the still face experiment, which was pretty much like what I just described that I saw recently. The mother didn't have a cell phone then. She was directed and told to make her face unexpressive and unconnective. Some of them turned away and some of them just went blank. It's still happening. It's happening more, and it's still very painful. I say that perhaps this started when TV became popular, perhaps. But now it's much more frequent because of iPhones and other devices. So I've been told that an infant's eyes focus best at 14, 18 inches distance, which is the average distance from a baby's eyes to a mother's eyes when they're nursing. A wonderful time for looking and seeing and smiling and humming and talking. If the caregiver is nursing or feeding the baby, and watching TV or attending to her cell phone or something like that, the great opportunity of connection and time together is not happening. And we all know how busy we are and how we must multitask. But what does the infant know? The infant encounters a non-responsive atmosphere, and with all the life and liveliness in them, when it is not met or acknowledged, eventually it goes dull. So one of my missions in working with adults who work with children has become not to just explain the situation and tell them what they might do. That won't last long, because when we are busy, many things go to the background. And of course, we do what we need to do. But to try to get the adult to feel the feelings that the infant might be feeling, that might make the difference. If I tell you something, when you are busy, you'll probably forget it or push it aside and go back to your habit. But if you have had the experience, really felt it for yourself, then you will know, and you will then be able, hopefully, to respond from your depth, from your inside. Maybe your experience will have changed you. It's difficult to remember with your mind when you are in action, and we all know that mothers and caregivers are the busiest, most active people on earth. We can't think of things when we have to move, respond, care for. But if we have felt the sensation, experienced the need, we can understand the issues and respond from the inside out. And that is the practice that some of us call sensory awareness. So it's my mission to help the educator, the parent, the adult feel in their insides what and how the infant might be feeling, and thereby be able to understand more how to be with the child. I can tell parents how to be, but often it's forgotten in action. But by giving them the opportunity to experience for themselves, then they won't have to think about it so much, but will have learned it more deeply. So I want to share with you some suggestions, explorations that might help you explore the situations and hopefully give you some ideas for sharing, teaching other adults. teaching them how to care more for themselves and consequently then be able to care better for the babies. I have a quote for you from Emmy Pickler, which says, "Hands constitute the infant's first connection to the world outside of nursing. Hands pick her up, lay her down, wash and dress, and maybe even feed her. How different it can be. What a different picture of the world an infant receives when quiet, patient, careful yet secure and resolute hands take care of her. And how different the world seems when these hands are impatient, rough, or hasty, unquiet and nervous." That's the end of the quote. And I invite us now to explore the quality of touch, which we did a little bit as we were paying attention to our breathing, but let's explore touch a little bit more focused on the touch. Again, to start, tuning into ourselves and notice how your breathing is now. Is it different than a couple minutes ago when I asked you? So there are different kinds of touch. And rather than focusing on the breathing as we did before, let's focus on the touch and the quality of touch, or your experience of your touch. So if you take your hand, or both hands if you want, and how about bringing your touch just to the top of your head? Just a light touch. Nothing to do but be there. How does that feel to you? Does this sense of touch stay on your surface, or maybe do you feel that it affects you more deeply? And then very simply, just take your hands away. So I don't know where you put your touch, so I can't ask you specific questions. But just how do you feel with the touch, and how do you feel now that it's come away? Maybe you feel the difference in temperature. How do your hands feel, hands or hand feel, now that they've touched you somewhere? And now if you take your hand or two hands and bring them to somewhere on your face. It could be your cheeks, your forehead, your chin, wherever you might want to. And again, just a simple touch. And notice. What does this touch do to you? This is you touching you. How does this make you feel? And then again, simply taking your hands away. So let's do a slightly different touch. If you take your hand and touch wherever you want to, I'm going to choose my chest and make it a heavier touch. I'm just going to press down a little bit, not severely, but different from the light contact touch. This is with pressure. This could be on your thigh, on your shoulder. wherever. How do you feel now? And then again, just allowing your hands to come away. And what do you feel? What did you feel during the touch, and what do you feel now after the touch? Did that touch affect you in different places in addition to where you were touching? There are so many different touches. We could do stroking touches, all sorts of various things, but I think the experience of this it really affects me deeply. And while we're doing this, we are all adults. We've all chosen to be here, and you've chosen to listen to me. And we know we're going to touch. The baby doesn't know yet. Touch is very, very essential, necessary. And it's how we touch is so very, very important. Trauma can be soothed, cared for, released in many different ways. Difficult births, the touch there isn't usually very, very generous or kind. So how we touch is very, very important. And letting the infant know that they're going to be touched is so important in so many situations. And also when you're going to take the touch away, or I'm going to put you down, or diapering, now I'm going to take my touch away, could be very, very helpful and very supportive of the child. Now, I wonder if anyone would like to share a bit about what your experience was with your own touch. We have this, you can, raise your hand or go into chat, which I know nothing about, but I know I'm going to be supported with this.
Thank you so much. Yes. For all the attendees, you have the ability to raise your hand, and we'd love to hear from a couple people from the audience. If you raise your hand, I can unmute you and you can share your experience. You can also add your experience into the chat. I can see that as well. Let's see. We have a hand raised. I just have to find it.
And I want to assure you that this doesn't have to be a stupendous experience. The most simple experiences are those that go deepest in us.
Okay, it looks like Natalie Gazalik. Natalie, you can.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Judith. It's amazing how just with that very simple experience, I felt so much more present, and also the touch exploration was wonderful, and so simple, like you said, but that I could really feel the imprint, the lasting imprint of my hands where I placed them, that I could feel the breath in those places. And I often feel when I'm, with my infant son, when he's falling asleep, that my relaxation does have a relationship to his relaxation, and this just further, that just further gave pause for me there, because I believe that I'm being present, but that experience was just so much more than the depth of presence, I suppose, is something that I'm quite inspired with right now. Thank you.
Great, wonderful. Am I being heard? Okay, so when you said about your infant son, I thought, yeah, those are the greatest teachers that we have. So it's not me or we adults, it's the infants that can be our great teachers. Thank you, Natalie, for your response. Is there anyone else who would like to say something?
Yes, it looks like we have Dassi, D-A-S-S-I. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yes, it's Dasi. Hi, Hadassah Zamir. How are you? What I really appreciated from the exercise is that you gave the instruction in the beginning, the permission, like if you don't feel it, it's okay. And that sort of invited me to just be in the present. And I think that it just invited me into the moment, because I was like, okay, good. I don't have to think about, oh, it touched me. And like you said, don't give me some stupendous answer. And I feel like for me, that's missing in, everyday life, that it can just be very simple. And a bit of instruction, like you say, for the babies, just tell them what you're going to do or what you want from them, I think really guides us in a way that allows us to be more authentic, in my opinion.
Absolutely. They are our greatest teachers in being authentic. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Dasi. Is there another person maybe before we go on?
I don't have any other hands raised, but we have several people who shared some of their experience in the chat. Would you like me to read a couple of those?
Sure, that might be interesting.
My hands were cold on my face and it felt good to my hands, but it would not feel good to a warm baby. After I removed them, my face was tingling. It felt like my breathing with the touching on my cheeks, on my chest and head were more controlled, and that knowing how that would impact an infant.
Great. So there's a lot of learning in here. We can learn, we can be some of our best teachers too. Yes. Thank you, Michelle. I see the time is coming on, and I do want to have time for various questions at the end, but I would like to share with you one more exploration, which is so crucial in our world, even more so now, and it's eye contact. I mean, eye contact is, now that we're covering our smiles and maybe muffling our sounds, our eyes are even more important. And perhaps we can communicate, or we do communicate in our eyes in different ways. The eye contact integrates left and right brains, and eye contact is relationship, isn't it? And a lot of our teachers say that everything we learn is in or from relationships. So this eye contact, this relationship is essential for the growth of all of us, infants and adults. So here we are going to try to make some meaningful eye contact through a computer, which is just about, I'm 82 years old and I don't even know computers yet. So I'm just really blown out by this. So
I'm actually, just to let you know, I'm going to pop off so that people can really see your face.
Okay, great. Great. And see my eye contact. So this is going to be very frustrating for me because I don't get to see you. But here I am looking at you as closely as we can through this computer. And I just wonder how that feels to you. I think up until now, you've been maybe seeing my whole head or the chart or various things, but here we are in contact, as close a contact as I can make. And then just notice how your breathing is. How you feel in your seat if you are sitting in front of this computer or standing in front of this computer. And here we are I've come more closer to my computer, so hopefully we have even more close contact. And then I look away and I wonder what happened to you. Did anything change in you from the face-to-face contact? And then I looked away and now I am back again. Is anything changing now? Maybe you notice your breath. You notice this is all very subtle, but it's not subtle. Our breath is huge. We may not pay attention to it, but it's what keeps us going, keeps us alive, isn't it? So here we are talking again. And again, are there any changes in you? And I'm coming back. It was a different side that might have made a difference in you. Now my face is different. Are there any changes in you now that I've come back? So this is really an opportunity for us to be more in touch with ourselves. And the more we are in touch with ourselves, the more we can be in touch with other people, infants, adults. So now, if with this contact, I'm coming closer again, and I'm going to say, I'm going to move my attention. Did that make any difference in you? Let me do that again. So here we are. This is close contact. I could be laughing with you, joking with you, tickling you, something, if you're a baby. And then I say, I have to leave now. I'm going to move my attention. Was that different for you in any way? I wonder. Are there any changes in any of your sensations? Again, close contact. And just, I'm very, very busy today. I'm going to have to put you down. And I'm going to move my attention. Does that make any difference in you? I wonder if there is anyone who would like to speak about their experience with that. Michelle, are you here? And are there, yes, you are, I see you. Are there any people?
Kinesia had her hand raised. Let me make you talk, and forgive me if I pronounced your name wrong.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Ksenia. Hello, everyone from Israel.
Hi.
Hi, I would like to share my experience because it was so clear to me. When you turned away first time, the first reaction in my brain was like, hey, where are you going? You were just talking to me, what happened? And I noticed that my breath kind of stopped for a second. And then I began to breathe more rapidly. And it kind of affected my heartbeat as well.
Really?
So
yes,
because it was such a weird, I didn't expect that. You were talking to us and then you immediately turned away and I was like, hey.
Yeah.
But then when you did it for the second time, when you told us, I knew what to expect, and it was clear to me what's happening. So it was a completely different experience, even though I still wanted you to look at me, but it wasn't a shock that you turned away. So this is the difference.
And an amazing, it's a huge difference, isn't it? And we are
very
all
big.
adults. We've chosen to be here today in this conference, and your first response was so clear. And so, hey, and you know, but the babies, it wasn't their choice. They don't know. And so thank you very much for being so clear. And yeah,
Thank you.
thank
It was
you.
amazing.
Okay, and next we have Danielle or Danal, Daniele. You may go.
Hello, hi, thank you. It's Danili.
Danielle.
I have experienced this exercise of the presence exercise a lot of time, but even like a lot of time and for very long periods, like 20 minutes doing presence exercise with other people. And I know how good that feels, but I had never, ever experienced somebody doing a presence exercise and turning away like this without without excusing or saying something. And my feelings were like, my first question was like, why has she turned away? Why? I felt excuse me, English is not my first word, so my vocabulary sometimes is a little short, but not offended, but the same feeling that you feel when you're offended,
Yes.
So, and the second time, when you really said that you had to move your attention, I actually wanted to know what you're going to do, I really wanted to know why you had to move your attention, or to what. That's what I felt.
Great. Thank you so much. And that tells us something more. Not, let the infant know, but they might want to know more. So I have to move my attention. I'm going to warm up your bottle, or I'm going to get you some warmer clothes or something. They really, really want to know. That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Stacy.
Stacy's still muted, I see on my screen.
There we go.
Oh,
She goes.
Hi. Thank you, Judith. Yes, I too had the experience of holding my breath. As soon as you turned away, I actually realized that I had stopped. Like everything stopped. I waited and waited and waited. And then I started to wonder, am I supposed to be looking at something specifically? What am I supposed to see now on her face? What on the side of her head? What am I found myself in confusion. So I can understand an infant being startled, waiting, being confused, and wondering. And if you just walk away from them, then they're stuck in that state of pause or confusion.
yes.
And when you did tell us that it was going to happen, I felt anticipation. Like, now I'm going to see the side of her face. What did I not notice before? Or, I felt a different experience. It was a different feeling of So when you said we should tell them we're moving away, but also I have always liked to tell my children because of this, so that they always had a knowledge, or at least tell them, and I'll be back after your nap, or I'll be back in a while because I'm going to go do this.
Great. Yes, absolutely. So you are augmenting it beautifully. Thank you so very much, Stacy. So we as adults know what we're doing or what we're going to do. The babies don't. And that causes a lot of insecurity and questions for them. So the more we can tell them, I'm going to do this and I'll be back after your nap. That is wonderful. Thank you for adding that.
Would you
And
like to take one more? We have several other hands.
yes.
Okay. Jez, J-E-Z.
Yeah, it's
Is
Jay.
Mhm.
Hi. I think I immediately, I guess I was a bit stunned, and I think I felt my brow furrow and just kind of almost in essence lost, I don't know, faith or trust in you, because it took a moment for it to kick in that this was an exercise. And I think that's what was interesting. It was just like, oh, she's having difficulties, or how quickly she lost her ability to, like, you know, remain present. And for a moment, I think I really lost that kind of intentionality that we had just been experiencing. And it took a moment for it to kick back in. So I feel like that was definitely interesting in connection to how the children, it may just be a split second for us, but it may mean the most to them, and they can't kick right back into the idea of like, oh, she's teaching us something right here, you know? And so, yeah, it was very interesting how I had almost immediately like, oh, geez, what is she doing?
Absolutely. And we're adults and we know those poor infants really go through a lot, and we don't even see it or think of it or notice it. Thank you very much for that response. Yes. Is there someone else, Michelle?
Yes. How about Linda? Linda, would you like to share your experience? I'm not sure if she's able to unmute, perhaps not. Okay. We can also take from, oh, there we go. Linda, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. My name is Linda. I'm a nanny with a lot of years of experience. And recently, I have done a job for about 3 months, and I was taking care of a 3-month-old baby. And I feel like every time I'm taking care of a baby, their soul and my soul just connect one way or the other. And just to even sit and be talking to her or saying a lot, and she'll just be quiet and just listen to me. Um, every time if I'm changing her diaper, and I'll be like, this time I have to put your diaper cream on, you know. Are you ready for that? And she'll be all excited, jumping and all of that. So for me, I feel like that's the reason why I'm a nanny, just because I love, I love this connection, this, soul connection with them, the free spirit of them and you being connected. It's something, it's, I enjoy doing it. You know what I mean? So I definitely, I definitely go with this idea.
That is so wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's beautiful, beautiful. So I'm looking at the time too. Let's put up the bibliography, Michelle. And let me just say something very quickly about it. And then we'll go to questions and answers. And anyone else who wants to respond with their experience of the, okay. So can I see it? I just want to say this is not an academic bibliography. I did it more in a way chronological order with, Pickler first. I didn't put Magda's books in because I figured that you all know her and have them. There are 2 books here that are coming out in English, one about Emmy Pickler and the one by Elfriede Hengstenberg. And then Jacobi's book is in English, but down on the lower half of the bibliography, I just want to mention that Charlotte Silver's husband, long-term husband for many, many years, Charles Brooks, wrote a book about sensory awareness, and it was republished multiple times and may be out of print again. But so not to confuse you, the book entitled Reclaiming Vitality and Presence, I thought I would put it in case you cannot find the other book. This is a new book that is revised the old book and added some things by two of the students of sensory awareness. So that is easily findable. And then I have the whatever it's called, the link for the Pickler bookstore. There's that, I'm told the documentary on Losi, A Place to Grow, is beautiful. I've never seen it, but I've heard so much about it. I thought maybe some of you might like to see it. So there's the way to contact the shop there. And then if anyone's interested in more about sensory awareness, the link there, and there is my website where I've written several articles, and the articles, I've written at least 3 different articles about Elsa Gindler and the influence. So that's a bibliography for you. And I just have one quote from Emmy Pickler that I want to end with, and then open it up to all the questions and responses that people might want to say. And this is a quote, another quote from Emmy Pickler. A child who achieves something through independent experimentation acquires a completely different kind of knowledge than someone who is offered the solution. And when I read that, I think, oh, that applies to we adults also. So that was Emmy Pickler. This is my presentation, and I want to thank you all so much for being here with me, and for RIE to invite me to be here with you. And now can we go for more openness and questions, Michelle? You're muted.
Yes, sorry about that. Okay, we have a couple of hands still raised. What I'd like to reach out though is 4 questions. If you can put them in the Q&A, we'll do a little bit of mix there, but the Q&A will try to answer those first, and then if there's time, we'll open up the mic again. But let's start with a couple of the questions that we've gotten. I had always thought that the strange face experiments were extreme examples. Somehow I did not make the connection that this happens all the time with cell phones. Can you recommend resources for additional sensory awareness training?
Yes, go to on the bibliography, the Sensory Awareness Foundation. What we have done is we're offering, different leaders in the field are offering free 1-hour sessions of different qualities, different focuses on Saturday mornings. And then there is a free workshop coming up mid-November with 4 sessions, and I'm one of the presenters. So sensoryawareness.org would be the place for you to find all sorts. And there are some recordings there that you can click into.
Okay, great. Our next question is, in your experience with working with children and adults, how does the lack of sensory awareness during infancy and childhood manifest itself in an adult, either on the physical, emotional, or mental levels? I'm curious as to the long-term detrimental effects, as well as the benefits, thus stretching the importance of the infancy stage.
Oh boy. How much time do we have? You know, that is such an important point that you bring up. And it's interesting. As I've been preparing this talk, my focus was for RIE. As I was reading, well, something or saying something, my mind went to, you need to say something about adults, and how the fact that this kind of exploration, or even me saying, hey, this is what happens to the infant, can also activate something that the adult experienced as an infant. And the other part of my brain said, don't go there in this talk. You don't have enough time. But yes, it is so important and not uncommon. And I must say that the gentleness of sensory awareness, which isn't teaching anyone anything, it's allowing the person to just open up to themselves and be more real, that allows for a lot of healing. So Charlotte, Elsa Gindler was never a psychotherapist. Charlotte Selver was never a psychotherapist. I'm one of the few sensory awareness leaders who is. But just the allowing and the accepting of it really is very healing to a lot of adults, early childhood traumas of their own. And then, of course, if we have that in our history, we usually keep on passing it on. So the work with adults is so important. I asked Charlotte why Gindler did not work with children and why Charlotte didn't work with children. And Charlotte said that she felt it was more important to get to the adult, who is the one who's perpetuating the issues. So help them, and then they can help the children.
Great, thank you. I work in a center that is connected to our local hospital. I work in the infant room. Judith mentioned that babies learn through sight and touch and expressions. We now have to wear masks because of COVID. We opened up back in May, and we have a few parents concerned about language. Already we have seen the frustrations with babies that they can't touch our faces and eyes. Also, we have to wear gloves when feeding, so they are losing the touch of skin. How do I help? Any ideas?
Oh boy. Well, well, for instance, when the baby is bathed, maybe you can take a bit more time and do it more slowly. If you're not allowed to touch their skin, or I'm guessing you're wearing gloves, let whatever it is, whether it's the washcloth or the gauze, move more slowly and talk to the baby about that. So the baby can focus on the being touched. So when they can't touch certain things, at least they do have that in their bank. Things like that. And holding, even through piles of clothing and stuff, the holding and how you hold in the full support of the baby and not moving too quickly. And okay, now you're done with your bottle. Now I'm going to get up and we're going to walk over. I'm walking you. Now I'm going to put you back in your whatever. All of that with eye contact is the best we can do right now, isn't it? Great, such important question.
Yeah, this also has to do with the experience of the touch. How do you think about the quality of touch when handling babies? For example, I have some experience with drug-exposed newborns who can find even light touch to be very irritating. Is there a weight of touch that is a good place to start?
Light, even lighter. Even lighter. But not only that, if you make the eye contact with the baby and say, I'm going to touch you now, my hand's coming closer, closer. You know, again, it's the awareness, being in the present, closer, closer. I can almost touch you. Now I'm going to touch you. That might help. That gives them a larger background to work with.
Okay.
So the awareness and the and the presence is very crucial.
Thank you. I work with teen parents who often had challenging childhoods themselves. Can you recommend any specific sensory awareness trainings for this population?
Yeah, same thing. No age. It does. I've had young children in my classes. Sometimes they just want to crawl around the room when the adults are doing something else, but that's okay because they're in that presence. They don't have to. And even to adults, we can all be in a room and I can suggest, let's lift our arm, and somebody doesn't want to. Fine. Know that, be aware of that. That's yourself right now. So bring the teenagers in. Oh my gosh. And what they learn, they can pass on. When they're back in their habits and traumas, that gets passed on too. So this is really important work, what you people are doing. Great. Thank you.
We have a few more minutes, and I have some people with their hands up. I thought we could take a couple questions live here. Mitch Aspira, nope, sorry, looks like Linda Dozier. Did you have a question?
I had a unique experience this week that I wanted to share. I'm also a nanny. I just started a new position with a 9-month-old who has had a baby nurse since birth. I practice this very connection-centered and child-led approach. So immediately I was placing my hand on her chest, telling her I'm going to change her diaper, making eye contact, talking to her about what she's doing, not getting in her way when she wants to play with something. And it was really amazing that by the end of the first 3 hours, I saw her turning to the baby nurse, trying to make that connection that hadn't been available to her. So it was just this immediacy of responsiveness to this connection-centered approach. And it was just really unique that it happened this week, and now I'm at this conference. So I wanted to share that with everybody.
Wow. I'm thinking of Emmy Pickler firing all of those nurses and doctors and bringing in just, yeah. People. Yeah. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah. Okay. And now we have Linda. Linda, did you have a question?
No, I'm sorry. No.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have Lisa, that was who just spoke, I believe. Is there anybody else? Any other hands raised or questions? Oh, here we go. We experienced what it was like to not be spoken to versus being spoken to. But how do you, Dr. Weaver, explain to unfamiliar adults the importance of telling the baby what you were going to do? So why language is an important part of the process, not only the eyes and touch?
Well, if they're talking to me, they're open to the possibility. And I haven't come in contact with any adult who has resisted it. I've come in contact with piles of adults who it's never occurred to them to talk to the baby or to even consider the baby is a human in a way. You know, the baby's a baby, but considering their feelings and making contact with them is unusual. And when the adults who have not had that reference in their background, having contact with the baby really changes them. That is really so moving and so essential for both, probably more for the adult than the baby, but for both of them.
Great, thank you. Okay, it looks like we've answered a lot of our questions here. Let's see, I think we have one more. Nope, that hand went up and then right back down. Oh, one last one. Where have you seen sensory awareness work the most effective in your career?
Wow. Well, I have used sensory awareness when I worked with Tibetan nuns in exile from Tibet who had been tortured in prison. I did a lot of work with them. It made a big difference in their, I mean, just the touch. And this is on a population of people who don't touch normally. Nuns don't, touch or do anything, but just being touched or just even touching themselves. And we're having to do that more and more because of this time of Zooms and things. It makes a really big difference. I can't think of any population that I have worked with where this kind of work, just simple slowing down, that hasn't made a difference. Yeah. I'm thinking. I can tell you one other thing. I was asked to come in and work with hospice attendants in hospice. And what I did was, we touched, and then there was back in the days when we could touch each other. I had one person move another person's arm. And at the end, the woman said, "Oh my God, from now on, I'm going to be touching my patients so much more carefully and moving them with so much more sensitivity. You've changed my whole practice." So there are so many, many ways.
Yeah, throughout the life.
Babies who have just come in, babies who are going out. There it is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We have one final comment or question from someone you know, and this is from Ruth Ann Hammond.
Oh, hi, Ruth.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you that everything was so informative, but also so, well, I cried a few times.
Oh,
So deep. So thank you ever so much for that. And you sort of answered it already with the question about the tortured women in Tibet. But sometimes the body is giving you some pain. And we have a tendency to want to run away from that. And it sounds like you're asking our awareness to go ahead and listen to that and be in that. Is that?
Yes. Listen to it. And we are in it, whether we like it or not. If we're feeling pain, we're in it. Yes, listen to it. And very possibly something might change. Running away from something sort of puts it into stasis, and it's not going to change. But if we stay with something, if we can, and maybe we can only for a slight moment and then go run away, but that moment can make a big difference. Maybe next time it might happen, we can stay for 2 moments, and that might make a difference. Everything is, while we're alive, everything is changing, whether we understand it or whether we experience the change or not. But paying more attention to it may give us some big possibilities.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for your comment. I would like to share, is there something else, Michelle?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So I would like to share with you as a going away present, the fact that Elsa Gindler used to have her students do something first thing in the morning before they get up. Just don't pop out of bed and go and do whatever. And we're busy people, so most of us pop out of bed and go and do whatever. But if you ever have the chance, Gindler would call it Baby's Awakening. And she would have her students spend an extra 20 minutes. I've never made it beyond 3, but in bed, and just feel yourself awakening. And I'm not saying body, feel your whole self, your mind, your body, your muscles, your blood. Feel what you feel about awakening. And then go on with your day. She would have her students do that for 20 minutes and write. They did a lot of journaling and things. But we very busy adults, and I know when you have a child crying or something, you don't spend 20 minutes feeling yourself. But if you have a chance, or maybe we can turn it around and do it as we go to sleep, that might be very helpful for us in our busy and frustrated daily lives. So that's a gift from Gindler to you. And thank you so much. Thank you, Michelle, for your support. And thank you all for being here. This is really a beautiful situation.